Hi, I am Patrice Samuels, Senior Analyst at Parks Associates, and I'm joined today by Fritz Werder, who is the GM of Tuya. Now, today, Fritz will be telling us a little bit more about Tuya and what the company does in the space and his role at the company, and also give us his perspective on the smart home market and the smart home industry in general and where that's going. Does that sound good, Fritz?
That sounds great. Thanks so much,
What
Patrice.
Wonderful. So why don't we kick it off by, you giving us an understanding, a deeper understanding of Tuya and, how Tuya sort of fits into the smart home space in general.
Absolutely. And first of all, thanks again, Patrice, for the introduction, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this Parks Associates event, the Connections event. So thank you. As Patrice said, my name is Fritz Werder. I'm the General Manager and Head of North America for Tuya. We are a leading global IoT platform provider. Our businesses really fall under kind of three distinct go-to-market strategies. So the first business is our operating system business, where we help brands enable smart devices and services. And so we provide a suite of services to those brand partners. The first thing is around cloud services. So those are all the different commands and controls for devices, scenes and automations, data analytics, integrations with other platforms such as voice control. So all of the relevant cloud services. Second is around the wireless connectivity. So we work with many of the major silicon providers and have created a series of plug and play IoT modules with their radios that also include our operating system on it. And then we do app development work for brands as well, everything from a really quick, inexpensive reskin of apps all the way up to highly customized, fully differentiated app experiences. So that all together, along with doing, developing customized voice skills for brands, we work with all different types of brand partners across lighting, electrical, security, health and fitness, small appliances, large appliances, consumer products, toys, etc. So we help them develop those products, and then we can either introduce them to factories that can build the solutions, or we can plug into their existing factories and supply chains and get them up to speed and help them be effective. So that's the first business. The second one is a software as a service, platform as a service business, and that's subscription based. And we have four different vertical market solutions that we're delivering. One of them is in the home security space, one in the smart apartment area, also hospitality, and then one in commercial lighting. And again, these are for either large end users, brands, service providers that are looking to create recurring revenue or service-based businesses. And then finally, we also work with developers of all different shapes and sizes, from hobbyists to professional oriented developers to engineering service companies that want to use our self-service, low code, no code IoT platform to be able to build and deliver solutions for their clients. So all different types of developers in that community.
Wow. So it sounds like your company is providing just a lot of the backbone of the smart home products and services that a lot of us currently enjoy in our homes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting. Lots of great opportunity, lots of interesting customer engagements every day. So the diversity is really unbelievable, and the rate of change is exciting.
Speaking of rate of change, let's talk a little bit more about the smart home. Let's dive a little deeper into that topic in particular. So, can you talk a little bit more about just some of the industry and consumer trends that you think have really shaped the smart home market and sort of getting us to where we are today?
Sure, absolutely. I think there's a number of dynamics that have been in play. I've been involved in the industry for quite a few years, and certainly within the last number of years, I think everyone recognizes the impact that voice control has had on the industry overall. It's really accelerated smart home adoption. It's opened new user experiences. It's created new value and ease of use for customers. So I don't know that you can have any sort of conversation around smart home without talking about the impact voice has had as a user interface over the last couple of years. Another one I think is just within, the last year or so, given the pandemic, more of a channel impact, but certainly digital transformation was happening everywhere and e-commerce was an important channel, but the pandemic really accelerated that by a number of years. And so as we look out at brand partners and the way they're providing a frictionless customer experience, whether it's in a B2C channel or whether it's in a B2B environment, the ability to deliver connected product solutions via e-commerce shopping has been a big boost. I mean, both in terms of how customers research products, are aware of solutions, are able to compare solutions, and then drive for adoption. So that would be another one. A third, I would say, is just the impact of subscription-based services on the industry. I think that the whole idea of software as a service has really accelerated and grown a number of companies. Particularly, it started in the security space with monitoring and RMR businesses that generate, whether it's video storage, whether it's central monitoring. There's a number of businesses that are built around recurring revenue models, and so I would say that's a third one, is how that's really helped accelerate businesses in the area of smart home. Finally, I would say the the awareness and the ever-changing landscape around data security and privacy, I think, would characterize the smart home space and IoT more broadly. The legal landscape, both locally and globally, continues to evolve. The definition and clarity around users' rights and respect for their data, threats around cybersecurity. As more and more devices are coming into homes, there's lots of concerns around how personal data is managed, controlled, accessed, and certainly that is a big part of what's happening in the smart home space today, is ensuring that we not only respect users' rights, but that we're doing so in a thoughtful way that delivers smart, secure solutions.
Yeah, those are certainly four big ones, and I definitely can't argue. No one can argue the impact that voice has had in really helping to drive the smart home and other advanced technologies forward. We had these major tech giants, such as Google and Amazon, putting a lot of or investing a lot of resources in the marketing of those products. So we can see why it has had such a strong impact. Now, speaking of technologies, can you talk a little bit more about what you think are just some of the other technologies that are helping the companies that are, trying to make it in the smart home industry? What are some of the technologies that are helping them address some of the challenges that they may encounter as they, try to offer products in these markets and, remain here for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Two come to mind for me. The first one is cloud. I think the
Mm.
growth of cloud computing overall and the associated services around cloud, it's opened the door to so many new business models. It's created, increased interoperability across platforms, has increased the ability for things like data analytics for businesses to be able to better serve customers, to learn more about how their products are being used with one another and across different channels and markets and so forth. So I think that cloud overall and all of the services that are being deployed using cloud computing is definitely one of those the technology areas that I think is helping companies meet the challenges of smart home or even more broadly Internet of Things. The second one I would say is probably the continued advancement of connectivity. So protocols and standards evolution. If you look at everything from Wi-Fi's continued advancement with the recent release of Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth Low Energy, Bluetooth Mesh, Zigbee, Z-Wave. They've added, longer range performance, increased security functionality, and have continued to evolve those standards. Thread, and we know that there's a lot going on with the big giants to try to bring that together. But certainly range, security, performance, all of those things have contributed to better user experiences. We're seeing at Tuya a lot of instances where brands are taking advantage of maybe multiple connectivity choices in a single product so that they can leverage the best of both worlds with those. Maybe it's a Bluetooth for pairing and then a Wi-Fi operation for ongoing utilization. So even combining protocols to deliver the best experience possible. So those are two that I would say is just the cloud and definitely the choice and evolution of all of the protocols.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned connectivity, and of course, some of those interoperability challenges that the cloud solutions are resolving. And certainly, we continuously see in our research where those are primary barriers to the growth in the smart home market. These are leading reasons why consumers don't purchase these products. They're concerned about the connectivity issues and other technical issues that it may have in the home, and they're concerned that these products just won't work with the other products that they have in the home. So definitely those are two big ones. So let's kind of wrap it up then by talking about, what is the next phase of the smart home growth and development, and any specific drivers that you think will help to get us to that new phase of where we're going.
Yeah, I think that one of them you just were hitting on. I mean, I think that while the connectivity and protocol areas have continued to advance in capabilities, I think there's no denying that one of the greatest barriers to even greater adoption of connected home and smart home and Internet of Things has been the fragmentation around interoperability and the challenges that customers have faced trying to choose between products and offerings. And so I think one of the areas where I would see continued advancement, and I know there's a lot going on in the with some of the big tech companies working together on this with the alliance side. But certainly um, continuing to see a greater migration towards interoperability between platforms. I think we'll still have proprietary platforms and we'll still have more open and interoperable platforms, but I certainly see more of a convergence happening there with a greater level of increased interoperability. I mean, that is key to delivering the best in class user experience for customers that I think all technology companies and all brands are really striving for. I mean, once we get to that, we'll truly see the impact of smart home.
I
The other,
certainly agree. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, please.
No, I was just saying I certainly agree with you. I definitely see where, even some of the major players are really starting to understand the importance of just being collaborative or working together to ensure that their products work together, because at the end of the day, it's a user experience that's going to drive overall industry growth. Now, I do want you to get a chance to finish if you had something else to add to that.
Yeah, I was going to say a second one I would see is continuing to see the advancement around autonomous and artificial intelligence functionality, really to drive user experience. I mean, at the end of the day, that experience that all of our customers and end users have with smart products are what's going to drive further adoption. If we as an industry are delivering great user experiences from simplicity of app to products that begin to not only activate around triggers that we engage as users, whether it's through scenes or automations or just manual triggers and apps, but where the products begin to learn behavior and react in a more proactive manner, and intuitive manner versus being initiated by the user. I definitely see where that's going to continue to see more and more advancement, and ultimately drive better user experiences, which again I think is key for all of us as an industry.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that as well. That value element is going to be important. I want to thank Fritz again for sharing his insights on the smart home market, what's driving the growth in the market, and just where we'll be in the next 5 years. So, thank you so much again, Fritz. We really appreciate your time here today.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Patrice, and thanks to Parks and Associates and their Connections event.
Welcome to Parks Associates' 25th year of Connections, the premier connected home conference. This virtual series will be hosted across 2021, bringing together a community of industry leaders in the connected home industries. In the 20-plus years that Parks Associates has hosted Connections, the connected home has evolved from a high-end concept towards a mass market opportunity with incredible revenue potential. Today, several high-profile market disruptions are emerging as a result of broadband adoption, smartphone usage, and consumer expectations for connectivity solutions that provide a personalized experience. Our 2021 sponsors are making all of this possible. Thank you to our sponsors for their support this year. Our analyst and visionary insights will feature executives in the connected entertainment and digital home technology industries. We hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions or watch past session replays. On March 24th, we will cover smart products serving the SMB market. Join us on May 12th for supporting remote workers with a smarter home. On May 25th and 26th, we will host a two-day conference to talk about the state of the smart home, pro installers in home technology, home service opportunities, and sensor innovation and AI driving new use cases. We will be back on July 14th for MDUs scaling up, on August 18th, State of the Home Security Market, September 22nd, Home Networking and Wi-Fi, and finally on November 9th and 10th, join us for 4 more sessions: Smart Home, Battle of the Platforms, Privacy and Security, Europe and the Smart Home, and Insurance and Smart Home. Thank you for joining us at Connections today and throughout 2021. We are happy to have you here and look forward to your feedback. If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the SwapCard platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating SwapCard, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page. Welcome back to the 25th Annual Connections Conference. I want to start out and thank our sponsors again for their support of our sessions going throughout the year. I'd also like to recognize our supporters for sharing the topics and information that we're covering in our sessions with their audience. I also hope you'll continue to join us for the rest of the year. We have some awesome sessions focused on the growth of the smart home for the remainder of the year, so you can join us. You're already registered, so welcome back for our next sessions. Today, we have a session focused on pro installers and home technologies, and this is perfect segment following our state of the market conversation we just had. First, we're going to have my colleague Amanda Jung presenting some of our latest research on the security market, and then we will bring in our visionary speaker, Jean from Google, followed by a discussion with Mark Owen from NICE. Following this, we have an amazing lineup of speakers to talk about the growth of the home security and smart home market, followed by a networking discussion on Zoom. Thanks for being here, and now I'd like to welcome Amanda to our stage to share her analyst insights on home security installation.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kung, a market researcher on our Connected Home team, and today I'll be touching on installation trends in the residential security and smart home industries. 34% of U.S. broadband households, which equates to approximately 36 million households, own a home security system. Among home security system owners, 29% subscribe to a professional monitoring service. 13% of U.S. broadband households, or about 14 million households, intend to purchase a security system over the next 12 months. Among U.S. broadband households that intend to make security-related changes or purchases, 53% are actively shopping for a change to their professionally monitored security system or service. There is great business opportunity for providers to capture the 66% of U.S. broadband households, or approximately 69 million households that do not own a home security system. COVID-19 has redefined the market for security and smart home devices, with both positive and negative factors emerging in this new environment. The installation method for home security systems has trended towards self-installation for several years, and COVID-19 has only helped hasten the transition as households seek to avoid risk of infection. Some householders avoided installation and even repair technicians entering their homes as much as possible due to the fear of COVID-19. Nearly 30% of consumers are hesitant to have an installer in their home. While this cramps growth for traditional security systems, it increases consumers' willingness to acquire self-install security systems, and 47% of security owners planning to self-install add-on devices to their system report their desire is strongly influenced by COVID-19. As you can see, self-installed systems have slowly been taking a larger share of the overall security systems market. As of Q4 2020, 42% of home security system owners chose self-installation, compared to 29% in Q4 2018. Highlighting the rise of self-installation as one of the biggest trends in the residential security industry. The trend of self-installation does not seem like it will slow down anytime soon. As you can see, self-installed systems have been slowly growing for several years, specifically for newly acquired security systems. As of Q4 2020, 59% of professionally monitored system owners who acquired a security system in the last 12 months chose self-installation, compared to over 1/3 reporting professional installation, a near flip of the situation just 2 years prior. Overall, the COVID-19 pandemic has made the peace of mind value proposition even more compelling. Combined with the economic downturn, social unrest, and increased time spent at home, there has been a rise in general stress, anxiety, and uncertainty among Americans, which raises interest in securing one's home. Even as COVID-19 restrictions begin to decline, it is likely many changes will persist. Messaging during this time is vital. Companies can emphasize convenience, comfort, and peace of mind. Similarly, smart home products are more likely to be self-installed versus professionally installed, though this varies by product category. Smart home products that require hard wiring or are commonly sold through a service channel, such as garage door openers and smart thermostats, are more likely to be professionally installed, while consumers tend to self-install products such as smart TVs, plugs, and light bulbs. There was a slight rise in professional installation for most smart security and safety device categories, the largest being smart sprinkler systems, jumping from 22% in Q4 2019 to 34% in Q4 2020. Many of the devices that experienced an increase in pro install are accessible from outside the home, which may be attributed to consumers not being comfortable with having strangers enter their home due to COVID-19. If this is the case, professional installation may rise in more device types as we return to normal. Professional installation for smart energy device categories remains relatively constant year over year. with no changes greater than 4%. Although there were no large increases, it may be notable that there were no decreases despite COVID-19 concerns. The small increase may be related to consumer frustrations with self-installation in the past. Another trend that arose due to COVID-19 is the heightened consumer demand for remote technical support instead of calling for a professional technician. With the emergence of consumers who were concerned about having a stranger in the home, consumers reported higher preferences for remote technical support. As you can see, 30% of consumers reported a preference for remote support for maintenance during COVID-19, and nearly 30% are hesitant to have an installer in their home. Unsurprisingly, Parks Associates' 2020 Security Dealer Survey finds that 30% of dealers report decreased truck rolls of 40% or more, increasing cost-saving opportunities. However, only 26% of dealers report having developed tools to help remote support, despite the increased interest from consumers. To remain competitive during COVID-19 and moving forward, more dealers will need to develop tools to help remote technical support. It is likely remote technical support will not recede greatly post-pandemic. Instead, consumer interest in remote technical support will likely continue to grow due to the added convenience. As consumers move towards online and digital services, security dealers must continue to develop more tools to help support customers remotely, such as YouTube video tutorials and Do It With Me installation help via video, phone, or chat. Market segments begin to blur as pro install providers offer DIY solutions and DIY brands offer professional installation. Pro install providers like ADT, Brinks, and Comcast have all added DIY options. At the start of 2020, ADT entered the DIY space with the announcement of a new DIY smart home security brand, Blue by ADT. The DIY product line seeks an advantage by offering flexibility for customers to build their ideal smart home security solutions. Customers also have access to professionals to help talk through the DIY setup and get professional support as needed. Brinks Home offers both DIY and professional home security services with security systems that consumers can install themselves or professionally install for an additional cost. At the end of 2020, Comcast Xfinity Home announced a new DIY self-monitoring service called Self Protection, priced at $10 per month. Since the service is limited to Xfinity Internet customers and customers are limited to Comcast-provided hardware, the impact on the market is limited from a competitive perspective. However, Comcast's interest in DIY underscores the hypothesis that DIY can be an on-ramp to professional monitoring service subscriptions. At the same time, companies that started in the DIY space now offer professional installation. Although these company systems are designed to be easy to self-install, there will always be a customer base that prefers professional installation. This may be because either they don't have the confidence or the time to self-install. Abode partners with HelloTech, a smart home services company, to offer professional installation, while Ring partners with OnTech Smart Services, a subsidiary Dish launched in 2019 as a competitor to Geek Squad. And Simply Safe also offers professional installation for a fee. Last year, ADT and Google announced a partnership, and recently, ADT began selling Google Nest products with installation and consultation services provided by ADT technicians. Providers expanding their solutions to address both pro and self-install provides consumers with the ultimate choice, expanding the reach of companies to new customer segments. But it also increases competition in the industry, driving down pricing and making product differentiation more difficult. Despite the rise in DIY, companies continue to invest in professional installation. This past quarter, ADT and Dish announced a partnership to expand access to ADT's smart home security products through Dish's nationwide network of smart home professionals. And earlier, Atlanta-based Ackerman Security Systems joined the ADT Authorized Dealer Program to sell and install ADT smart home security services to its customers. These partnerships extend ADT's market reach and the speed at which it can deploy professionally installed smart home security services. Meanwhile, Brinks Home announced it reached an agreement on a long-term contract with its largest authorized dealer, Skyline Security, that extends their partnership for another 5 years. This indicates Brinks' commitment to professional installation despite its DIY offerings. As competition intensifies, ADT and Brinks are taking initiatives to maintain a stronghold in the market with professional installation as COVID-19 restrictions begin to lift and consumers become comfortable with allowing strangers into their home again. Moving forward, it is likely more companies will continue to blur the lines to offer both professional and self-installation. Despite the growth in DIY, there will always be a customer base that prefers professional installation. Companies will need to learn how to balance both preferences to remain competitive. Next up, we have a visionary insight and audience Q&A with Jean Lanoy, Head of Professional Partnerships at Google. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after a sneak peek at our new podcast, The Connected Consumer, debuting today.
The Connected Consumer Podcast.
Hi, my name is Rosie Alpino, and I'm one of the hosts for Parks Associates' new podcast, The Connected Consumer. This podcast is all about Parks Associates' data-driven market insights on emerging consumer technology products and services, featuring our talented analyst team and industry leaders bringing new and innovative products to the market. In this podcast, you'll get an inside look at the latest industry trends focused on the connected consumer, home automation and security, energy management, connected health, and independent living, and digital content and video services. In our very first episode, we will take a trip down memory lane through the history and evolution of Parks Associates. This year, Parks Associates is celebrating its 35th year in business and its 25th year hosting Connections, which is our signature event focused on the connected home.
The Connected Consumer Podcast.
Thank you, Amanda, for a great presentation of some of our recent consumer data and market insights. There's so much going on that is redefining the security market and smart home space. To discuss that further, let me introduce our visionary speaker, Jean Lanoy, Head of Professional Partnerships at Google. Thank you, Jean, so much for sharing your time today. It is great to see you. Let's get going with a short presentation that you have and then go into our Q&A for the main part of our session.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. Let me pull this up for everyone and we can get started here. Great. I'm gonna lose sight of you, so just let me know when you got me.
We're good there. We can see the screen.
Okay, cool. So thanks for having me on. As Elizabeth said, I'm Jean Lanoy. I run our Pro Channel business here at Google Nest. And I don't have a long presentation for everyone. Looking forward to more of the conversation and questions. But what I did want to do was just set a little bit of baseline of how we're approaching the professional installation business here at Google Nest, and give you a little bit of my own call it purview of the opportunity. So when you look at the Google Nest business as a whole, it's all around building a helpful home that takes care of the people inside of it and the world around it. And we don't lose much of that. That's really the message around how we're talking to consumers. But when you come into my side of the business around the Google Nest Pro, we've got almost the same message, but we're really focused on building the helpful home business together. So as we go about this, we On my channel of business, we think of the pro as the actual consumer, and the consumer as the entity that is getting the experience of the products and the integrations. So the pro is the decision maker, the consultant, the expert. They're really in control of a lot of the recommendations and the decision making of what products are going to be best suited to help that consumer or meet whatever demand the consumer is looking to satisfy. And so there's a distinct difference here from a B2B versus a traditional B2C. And there's a huge amount of investment for us when you look at the professional installation. If you're going to reach into that next audience, that mass market, if you will, it is going to oftentimes require tools, getting up on ladders, crawling through crawl spaces, attics, basements, whatever the case may be. There'll be a whole set of audience and next consumers that either don't have time or aren't interested or don't have the capability of doing those. So for manufacturers or all of us that are in this space, pros are going to play a critical role of reaching into that next audience. And it may not be for every product, but certainly as the product lines expand, as you see additional integrations, this is just a huge focus for us. We believe that there is a large business opportunity, and we're really in the beginning stages of that. I've been with Nest since 2013 and have watched the progression, and the amount that has changed from 2013 to today is drastic. It's all good, but even though that is a substantial amount of time, we're still at a beginning stage here. And for everyone that is watching, I'm focused, and we're focusing a ton of effort related to professional installers. We're really focusing on whole home solutions or multi-product or solution selling, multiple products, multiple opportunity, higher revenue, additional profitability for businesses and manufacturers, whether that is on a hardware or a services side of the business. So, where the industry kind of started on these niche products for solving solutions, really, we think the business is going to continue to evolve into this whole home outlook, which will be first party product, third party product, and services that are utilizing those pieces of hardware that are running inside the home. And then last but not least, just to utilize a little bit of some of the Parks Associates data, which is very valuable. And Elizabeth, I pay attention to all your posts, by the way. The business is it's not getting smaller. It's going to continue to rise. Products that can be connected will be connected. And so the opportunity for inclusion of pros, I think, is critical. But there's a lot of learnings and hurdles still to overcome as we continue to develop an omni-channel of how we go to market.
Great. Well, thanks, Jean, for that short presentation and overview of what you all are working on. Really fascinating, and would love to dive a little bit deeper into some of what you're talking about. We do have a number of questions that are already coming in, but let's go ahead and start just about where we are now in this mass market appeal. So we heard earlier from Daniel Cooley, CTO of Silicon Labs, about 4 things that need to happen where we can get to the point where we've gotten. And so the question to you is, have we reached an inflection point now in this period of time, perhaps with the pandemic behind us, and having consumers even more engaged in their homes with technology? Have we gotten to this point where we will see mass market appeal and adoption of these products?
I think we still have a little way to go, but the evolution that we've seen is, I would say, it could be characterized as an inflection point for sure. You see so many. The early adopter side of the business is there, and it was there, but now you have this inflection point, I think, where regardless if you're a professional installer or you're the end user, consumers suddenly have a real feel for what an ecosystem means. Early in smart home, we saw people. They may have bought a camera from one manufacturer, a thermostat from another, a doorbell, a smart plug, and they were saying, I'm making my home a smart home. And now what we're seeing is where there was terms like ecosystem before, people knew what an ecosystem was, but maybe didn't contextually understand what that meant. And now I think what we're seeing is whatever platform they're starting to start with, they have this understanding that they want things that operate within that platform. So suddenly this inflection point is really, I think, about ecosystems, the understanding even at a consumer level. You don't have to be an integrator. You don't have to be a professional installer. It is truly, if you have some smart home product, you have this understanding of wanting to make sure that those products operate within that ecosystem that's very simple to control and add or make changes, whatever it may be. So certainly, I think in some point, an inflection point.
Okay, great. And that speaks to specific use cases for consumers in the sense of looking at a door lock or a camera, or leveraging a smart speaker with voice to control different devices in their home. So what do you think this means for how consumers are making purchases? What does that look like for the professional installation market?
For the professional installation market, I think, what we've seen pros starting to face questions when somebody's making a recommendation about something that they want to install in the home, regardless of what trade it's from, HVAC, electrical, security, home automation, etc. People are asking whether or not that will operate within whatever platform. If they started with Alexa, if they started with Google, they may be dabbling in HomeKit, etc. There are decisions that are clearly being made around desiring products that can work with what they've started on. So the guest that you had on just prior to the analyst was talking about how voice has affected, and voice, where it started off as audio only, now with screen is really where you're seeing most of the trajectory. They still want to use voice, but there's so many benefits of having a screen with visual interaction and inputs. But the decision and the questions from consumers asking whether or not whatever product is being suggested by that pro, will it operate in what they have for an ecosystem today, or what they know they may want for that ecosystem. So pretty interesting how, it went from just a beginning business a few years ago to now consumers are asking for it specifically or checking.
Yeah, and certainly the manufacturers appear to be paying a lot of attention to that call for interoperability. And that, brings up this big topic that's come up already with the Zigbee Alliance moving and rebranding itself, and also the chip initiative, now Matter. And I have a question about that, so let me go ahead and throw this out to you. While initiatives like Matter are focused on optimizing interoperability between different ecosystems, how does Google approach product and feature differentiation, which could inhibit the impact of Matter?
That's how does Google? Well, I think, the thing that I'll say is, if you look at past history, whether or not you were in home automation or you were in security or businesses that played in those similar spaces, there's always been this desire for one protocol, but which protocol was the right one? And there was, call it inter-business opinions on that. And what Chip is doing when you have organizations like Google, Amazon, Apple saying, hey, we're going to go in on this, I think that pushes a lot of energy directly towards that. And it makes it the chances of interoperability better than what they've ever been. Combine those big companies along with the amount of product that is out there now and the draw and the growth that is happening. I think some of the things that prevented interoperability in the past was that they were very nascent. Security may have been very, very big on Z-Wave, and another industry may have been very big on Zigbee as examples. But when you have big threes plus the partnerships and all of the organizations that are joining and the growth of the space, I think it makes the interoperability opportunity better than it's ever been. So I think from a standpoint of how are we looking at it, there's a lot of investment in Chip and Michelle Turner. There's a great YouTube video if folks want to check it out from Google I/O, where Michelle really does a nice job of laying out exactly how we're diving in with Matter.
Well, that's great. And thanks for sharing that reference. We'll make sure our audience has access to that. It speaks a little bit to some of the silos in the market that we've seen over decades and that integration to get to this whole home play. So maybe you can talk a little bit on the fragmentation of the market as it relates to sort of the specific verticals in the home. So if you look at the HVAC or the thermostat side, you look at maybe water leak detection, you look at windows and doors. How are these silos being brought together beyond the issue of interoperability, which we've touched on quite a bit so far in today's
session? I think, I can't speak for all organizations, obviously, but the way that we see a lot of these products that are 3P products, a lot of value, we aren't going to make everything in the world, right? There are some really great manufacturers that make products that have real value that need to operate. So for us, we think about what is the integration that they can have, how much value will they bring to the consumer. There's a long list of opportunities that we could bring in, but proactive notifications are a big thing for us. Figuring out how to use that display and not make too much noise and provide an overwhelmment of information. All of it is a balance, and it's a little bit of learn as you go. But I think for the most part, what we definitely see is consumers wanting to understand what is happening on the inside of their home. They want to understand whether it's electricity usage or other sensors or water usage. They want to be able to have some level of a dashboard, if you will, of knowing that everything is okay in the home and that there aren't problems that are occurring. So for us, when we think about that, it's really about utilizing awareness. When do you present something to a consumer? And all of it is realistically in development because we're just in that stage right now.
Well, that's great, and also speaks towards monitoring and consumer choice and consumers, having the ability to know what they want to know when they want to know it, which speaks to the service play for the hardware. And so I have another question that's come in for you from our audience. What are you most excited about for home services businesses in the next 3 years? So that's from our audience.
Yeah, home services business in the next 3 years. I think that, there is I get most excited when I think about my own home and what would I want. And for me, what I would want is to understand a little bit what I was just talking about. Is everything okay in my home? And then what are the things that I could combine with that awareness that are tied to the things that I consume every day? And so whether or not it's services like a streaming TV, I want to be able to see my own cameras. I want to know how much energy I used. Maybe I want to know how much fuel is in an emergency tank, or how much power is in my power wall. I think different sensors, indoor air quality, all of those things I think are capable of being part of a monitored home in one form or fashion. So as you think about that in the next 3 years, how do you combine that into something holistically? I think all the ingredients are there, but how do you put the recipe together is where the challenge is.
Yeah, well, it's all about execution, right? So lots to see in the next couple of years. Let's get back to the heart of our discussion, though, around installation and the DIY versus professional installation play. So a few years back, there was the big question of DIY sort of overtaking the home security world because consumers like self-installation. Can you share a little bit more of your views on DIY versus professional installation and what that means for monitored services?
Yeah, I think monitored services will continue to rise, whether or not it's professionally installed or it started off in DIY. I don't think that there's a bigger desire for DIY. I just think that there are drivers that put that there, whether or not it's the lack of ability to install. There could be a price point that prevents a consumer from being able to get in, so they approach more from that DIY, or there is a lack of confidence of knowing who to call. Right now, if you said, who do I call for smart home? I think that the audience, there might be 30 different answers of who do you call. Meanwhile, there are lots of providers, but there hasn't necessarily been this defined trade. And that's the mission that I'm on, to create a literal new trade within those trades that exist today. But I truly believe that whether or not you're DIY or you're a pro install, the monitored services or features that can go along with that products will continue to grow. It's just how it's going to happen. There's too many good things for organizations, companies, and conveniences for customers.
Well, sure, that's a really good point. And as Amanda pointed out in her presentation earlier, there's still 65 to 70 million households with no security solutions at all. So certainly a huge piece of the pie that's still there to capture. Let's talk just a little bit more, though, about those channels. In particular, the CEDIA channel, we've got the security dealer channel, and then the other contractors that we see very frequently in the home, the plumbers, the electricians, HVAC. What would you say? And of course, you're probably working along all of those. There's also the builder channel, which is a big one with 1 million new home builds a year. Yeah. How do you see this playing out for those group of tradesmen?
What we witness right now is CEDIA channel incredibly strong, right? They came out of home automation, and so they're really good at selling to consumers, explaining technology, making use of large product lines. HVAC starting to, obviously great entry point with thermostats. So many people start off their smart home journey with thermostats. They have so much opportunity. It's just the willingness to step into some of these other categories. On the security side, what we've witnessed is most of the focus, not necessarily on product, but of course on the monitoring or the subscription side of the business. And then electrical, really fast growing. The electrical contractor side really starting to pick up a lot of momentum. There's been some cool products that have come out lately. So I think that in combination with some of the growth that you see in solar sector, you could see where electricians really start to become strong in the smart home category. And then, the other cool thing that we've been seeing is there is development of truly, just call it smart home contractors. They're not doing home automation, right? They're not using these platforms like a Savant or a Crestron or a Control4 necessarily. They are just participating in this mass market appeal of smart home, and maybe they're hanging TVs at the same time, putting in linear speakers, sound bars along with that. So that's been interesting to see how there is a trade that is starting out of these trades. But I don't think one has, call it, owned the opportunity, but as the products continue to come out, it will be interesting. Just there's so much opportunity for almost everybody still. I wouldn't say it's been defined.
Yeah, certainly agree there, and think that the CEDIA channel could play a big role, but also just recognizing that many of these groups are small businesses, a lot of them family owned with very slim margins. So that ability to educate and help understand how to sell and execute on a complicated set of products, I think will continue to challenge the industry. That ties into a question that we've got that came in from our audience. So let me ask you this real quick. If a Google Home is professionally installed, who sets up the users, notifications, rules, etc.? And that many of the customers doing professional installation maybe don't want to have to deal with the setup side of it.
Yeah, especially during COVID. I don't think there's ever been a time, that's been more uncomfortable to ask for a customer's phone. So, to answer the question directly around the Google Home, most of the time what you're seeing is on devices that are really simple like that, it's being provided by the pro. They're letting the consumer do the, call it, setup of the app and the opt-ins for what they want or what they don't want. The technician is standing by, asking questions, or even helping them work through that. Where we see the opportunity for professional installers in those is really on the guidance that's going to happen with integrations and/or routines. That's where there is value for having that pro involved. So still very much a personal, setup from a consumer side. What we are doing at Google is trying to enable, we launched a new Nest thermostat, which has what's called a pro flow. And this is where it's allowing a technician to do the provisioning or the setup of that product on their own phone versus having to use a consumer's or stand over the consumer, or trying to guide the consumer through it. So they can provision that product, get it up and running, and then allowing the consumer to grab that and throw it on their Wi-Fi and do their personal opt-in. So we'll continue to, I think what you'll see from us is we'll continue to separate the part of what is needed by a pro and what is really personal to a consumer.
Well, that's great. And we are unfortunately at the end of our 30-minute talk here. It goes by so quickly, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to leave our audience with some final last words, specifically about the business of smart home and where you foresee the future for all of us.
Yeah, so I really did go by fast, but
it happens quick. It's amazing.
Yeah. But what I would say for us is we see so much opportunity. We know there's obligations on us to help continue to close the gap around what this business can look like as a whole from an installation and professional company versus just somebody buying something off the shelf. But integrations are key, and I think one of the opportunities that is sitting out there is big, call it industrial manufacturers, whether or not it's appliance or HVAC systems or electrical panels or water heaters, things that are really big and important for the infrastructure of the home. I think it's an opportunity for those manufacturers to jump out in front and participate with companies like Google and figure out how to have their products part of that ecosystem deeper than just call it a voice integration. That's what I'm excited by.
Well, that's great. Gene, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to address our audience. Thank you so much for joining us. We have more to talk about. And so again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everyone.
Great. So that was an awesome conversation. Doesn't get better than that. Thank you again for joining us, and we will be right back for our next session. I do have a question from the audience. How do you see working with utilities as a channel to increase smart home adoption?
Got the panel's perspective, the builder's perspective. Now let's see what the audience was thinking. How big a challenge is interoperability?
Someone submitted a question. What is the take for managed Wi-Fi services?
I'd like to divert from my next question to kind of cut to one of our audience questions. What type of content do you feel most likely to drive VMVPD subscription and retention?
We did have a question in from our audience though, so let me jump over here real quick. Have you or are you thinking about solutions around employee privacy?
We have a lot of questions coming in. I kind of want to dovetail on one of them. Can you talk about how you kind of view the pay TV business model?
Just a reminder to our attendees, you are able to ask questions in the live discussion button. You should bring up a paddle, and there's a Q&A tab.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Capice, and I am a Strategic Account Manager for Parks Associates Executive Conferences and Custom Marketing Services. First, I want to thank our sponsors for supporting our event today. Your combined and individual support helps make our events possible. As you may know, Parks Associates is a woman-owned and trusted market research firm with an excellent reputation for our research and executive conferences. While 2020 is a year that we will certainly never forget, it remains our goal in 2021 to serve and support our sponsors through our year-long virtual conferences and custom marketing services. Our conferences offer a unique combination of industry expertise and extensive consumer research and analysis, ensuring sponsors visibility to the right audience of our senior executives throughout the year. Connections, the premier connected home conference, is celebrating its 25th year and hosting more than 1,300 senior executives from the smart home, security, connected health, energy, and home automation industries during sessions throughout the year. Our 12th annual Smart Energy Summit addresses the evolution of the customer utility market, the impact of COVID-19, and new opportunities to drive engagement in utility-sponsored programs and energy-efficient solutions. Parks Associates' 8th annual Connected Health Summit addresses opportunities for connected health solutions to empower consumers, caregivers, and providers to meet the growing demand, independent living, chronic care management, remote access, and wellness and fitness solutions. Our 4th annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media brings together senior leaders to share insights on consumer adoption, churn, and spending on services, including the role of the connected CE in the growth of video viewing. If you are looking for new ways to engage with our audiences, increase your brand awareness, and network with our industry leaders, I would love to share with you on how to partner with Parks Associates to help provide your brand more visibility.
Great, so we're back. I'm so pleased to invite Mark Burson to join me for our next executive chat. Hi, Mark, how are you?
Hi, Jennifer, how are you doing?
Great, thank you. Mark comes to the smart home space as a veteran marketer with 15 years of experience at large global corporations like Xerox and InFocus, and high-tech startups like advertising software as a service platform provider Extreme Reach. and he joined NICE in 2019 as VP of Marketing and Product Management for North America. Is responsible for the NICE and Abode and high security brands. So we're so pleased to have you with us today.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, Mark, why don't we start off, if you could tell us a little bit more about NICE products and how installation fits into your solutions. We're focusing on install today.
Sure. Just a brief intro to NICE. We're a multinational home and building automation company with presence in 100 countries through 24 regional offices and facilities. We have over 2,200 of the industry's brightest individuals on our team, so it's definitely a great group to work in. In North America specifically, we focus on 3 key brands, which is Abode, NICE, and High Security. Abode is our direct-to-consumer DIY brand for smart home security and monitoring services. NICE offers residential and commercial gate and door openers, as well as sunshade solutions. Our roadmap also includes the introduction of smart home and building automation offerings that are already in our European markets and others. Recently in Europe, we launched our newest smart home solution, UBI, and I'm very confident that you'll see that offering reach North America in the near future. High Security, that's our brand focused on industrial gate and hostile vehicle mitigation barriers. More simply put, it's the perimeter security solutions side of our business. Worldwide, we have, as you see on the screen, Alero, which is a higher end brand manufacturing sunshade solutions, which is automation of blinds, shades, awnings, etc. And then Fabaro, and that's a brand that's a real key component of our professional smart home offering and software solutions. Personally, as you indicated, I've been on the team since 2019. I've already witnessed some significant and incredible growth even during the pandemic. In fact, our entire portfolio continues to grow globally, not only through strategic acquisitions, but also through innovation and new product development. In 2020 alone, we launched 64 new products worldwide. So it's certainly an exciting time for the business, and I'm looking forward to the years to come. In terms of how installation fits into our solution, one of our key objectives is to develop a full suite of smart security offerings, from DIY to specialized high security applications. And the installer channel is a real key component of our solutions. At NICE, our offerings worldwide, from gates to doors and blinds and smart home and security, they're designed specifically for the professional installer channel. And obviously, a brand like Abode, it's geared more towards the DIY segment, but even these products are available to installers looking to expand their portfolio. And when the NICE professional smart home offerings are available in North America, Abode offerings may actually help installers build on the conversations they're having with customers and then upsell into the NICE solutions. Previously, in the residential segment, I think the primary decision maker was the installer. Mostly because the offerings were traditional security systems that required hard wiring or professional monitoring plans with annual subscriptions. Now the role of the installer as a decision maker, it's still very true in the North American market when we're talking about gates and doors. However, we're seeing a shift to end users and them being more empowered and growing as the decision maker across the board, but more specifically in the smart home security space. And that changes the role of an installer or dealer to that of an influencer or advisor. But despite the growth of decision-making by end users, we still remain fully committed to our installer partners in the channel. And to ensure they're successful, we're continually investing in training and enablement initiatives, as well as marketing programs.
Yeah, what I love about the NICE perspective is because you have all of these brands kind of across the spectrum of solutions under the NICE group, you really kind of see all sides of the spectrum. And we've seen so much change, specifically in the residential security market over the past 5 years, as DIY install, DIY monitoring, smart security solutions that add monitoring kind of all come to compete in the same space. Fundamentally, how do you view the changes in the home security market? I think you mentioned a little bit there about, so a lot of it really does empower the end user with more choice. But, what's your perspective on the big changes we've seen?
There's certainly been a significant shift. Data from your organization suggests that 55% of recent security system buyers chose a self-install option, compared to only a third choosing professional installation. There are just, simply more people today who are wanting to protect their homes and make them more connected. And it's really that latter component that traditional security systems struggled with and is driving a pivot in some business models or new partnerships with technology companies that focus specifically on smart home. Some of this has been driven by the pandemic, which certainly accelerated adoption as more users spent time at home. In fact, I think there's also Parks data that's found a third of smart home device users in US broadband households increased their usage over the past year. But there's also been an increase in crime, and that's made more people aware of the need to secure their households. Some of the other factors that we've seen causing the shift have been decreased cost, ease of use, and then continually expanding features. So combined, I think that these elements are making consumers a lot more aware of the benefits of home security offerings.
Yeah, certainly. So thinking about DIY specifically, can you talk more about how kind of Abode really fits into your viewpoint here in the North American market? Do you feel like Abode is a stepping off point and those consumers become more professional solution adopters later, or are they a different type of customer? How does that DIY piece fit into the rest of your pro install suite?
Yeah, I think Abode is a great place for people to start. Something like the Abode Cam 2, it's affordable, simple to install and configure, and offers the ability to monitor your property in real time without a subscription or a commitment. Then you also have some of the more advanced features like 24/7 monitoring and look back. These are available for a nominal fee, but still without a monthly commitment. And for DIY, it's really that starting point because it's super quick and easy to set up a camera or install smart bulbs or other sensors, especially with the plethora of options that are available. And it really makes the consumer's job easy to set up or expand their system quickly. But you do have to be aware of some compatibility across brands and devices. But I think that'll change as we start to get more and more industry standards like Matter. But DIY for us and the way that we view Abode is really that starting point due to the lower barriers all around. And I think that, as I'd mentioned, it's a good spot for there to be an upsell from the Abode DIY system and then into the nice solution if you're looking for something a little bit more complex.
So when we think about, you mentioned the trends about more and more consumers selecting DIY, right? And a lot of that being driven somewhat by the pandemic. What is the value of the pro install, right? Is it the installation itself? Is it the consultative sale and really understanding what this home needs and what's really going to work? Training maybe for the user and actually how to use their system or their product, right? I think a couple of speakers have mentioned, there's always going to be some segment that wants the pro install, but where does that value really hold?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value that the pro installer can bring. For me, I think it's really around installation, setup, and then usage. DIY is definitely a disruptor, but that doesn't mean there's not an opportunity for the pro installers. Because of the abundance of devices that are out there, I think that it's easy to become overwhelmed as a consumer, and you really can look to that professional as an expert to provide you with guidance as you're looking to set up or expand your system. There's also 130 million households in the U.S. and around 19% of those have incomes of 150,000 or more. And data suggests that these households rely on professional services for multiple activities. So even though DIY was a little bit disruptive and is the first step into the smart home for some of these higher end households even, there's still an opportunity for installers. And as I mentioned, it's really around installation initially because the professional's job is now moved on to that as an influencer at the top of the funnel, and then an advisor when it comes to purchasing, and then being able to provide that opportunity to build what's needed for the end user, and then help maintain that system. Especially because as they expand, managing DIY devices in a home can become a full-time job. And it's more than just installation though, because then we have the setting up and setting up, pairing, provisioning, connecting a lot of different devices. It's a pretty big challenge that I think consumers often overlook. And there's this expectation, and rightfully so, that the process should be entirely seamless. And I think that's true when you do buy a full DIY system like Abode. But when you start to bring in multiple components together, it's challenging. And consumers really need to fully understand the impact of compatibility across devices and how they'll be deployed, and then how to use them to maximize value. And really, that's a pretty big ask, you know. And the installer is key to ensuring that a customer has the best experience possible when the solutions become complex. And then usage. So, you know, that's a whole nother factor. Programming the automations, it can be time consuming, even for a system like Abode. Online tutorials show you, you know, how to do it, but what happens if something goes wrong? When something stops working, you know, the devices don't work together? That's pretty frustrating for some consumers. So, you know, a home technology professional really understands all these systems and areas and then designs that solution that works for a homeowner and follows up by servicing the system as needed. So the bottom line for me on this one, where the real value lies for the consumer, is the consumer should not have to be the CTO of their home.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think that support piece is so important. You know, it's not just when the devices get set up, right? There are so many functions and features, first of all, that are probably underutilized, right? When you don't know, right, what all that you can make use of in your products. Then when something does break, who do you call, right? Can you talk a little bit more actually about your installers? Do you have a proprietary network of installers using kind of third-party installer networks or dealers, and how does that kind of work back with your brand if you think about it from a manufacturer perspective, and training and installing and supporting your products long term in the install network, and how those things work together?
Yeah, we don't have a proprietary network of installers. On the Abode side, we we work with Hello Tech for our professional installation, and we have partnerships and agreements with several security installers and dealers. We welcome the opportunity to work with more, but and we have two robust systems that will really add value to the installer portfolio. And if anybody's interested in if anybody's interested in working with us, they can certainly reach out, and we'll be happy to get connected. On the nice side of things, the professional smart home solutions, they haven't been launched in North America yet, but when they are, they'll definitely be available through the installer channel.
Got it. So since you have across different markets perhaps, but you have different customers, right, selecting different options and different approaches, how do you, when you're coming up with your communication and messaging and talking to these customers, how do you distinguish between a pro and a DIY, and what the advantages are, you know, for your customers, right, to help them make their shopping decisions?
Yeah, you know, for us, I think that the differentiation can really be thought of on an XY axis in quadrants. And so if security is the X and smart home is the Y, the question is then, does a consumer want more smart home functionality, or are their needs firmly rooted in security? And all of the devices and capabilities, they're situated somewhere on this axis. And that's when we start looking for, well, what's the best option for the particular custom type or customer type and their objectives. Most of the time, as we talked about, the consumer is going to start with a DIY device, especially if it's their first entry into the smart home. And that point is typically something like the Abode Cam 2. From there, though, it's easy to expand into an Abode system via the DIY route, or go with something more complex like UB. In terms of how we guide them, for DIY, we ask a series of questions to really understand what they're trying to accomplish, how many rooms and accessible doors and windows they may have, and then determine if a bundled DIY system is the best route, which it typically is if they're planning to expand, or if they already know that they want something more to complete a system in the future, and then don't mind spending a little time on the installation. But adding devices from multiple brands through DIY can, again, be tricky because of compatibility issues. However, Abode offers compatibility with Z-Wave, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, HomeKit, lots of compatibility there. So for us, it's just answering those questions on the DIY side. For Pro, what we're looking at is really working with the installer to determine the size and scope of the project, as well as the budget. especially homeowners with larger multi-level homes that may require a greater level of control or security or functionality over individual rooms or specific components through that professionally installed system. We then enable the dealers to help guide the end users through the process and are there to provide support and additional information.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing that's really interesting is the security market has again sort of blended across the spectrum of DIY and pros. It's not just install, it's monitoring too, right? In sort of the legacy security framework, the professional option meant professional install and professional monitoring together. Increasingly, we see that you can have professional monitoring with the DIY setup, right? You can have, I guess you could have pro-installed products that are not monitored at all, right? Can you share with us any trends you're seeing on how the install choice influences or doesn't the monitoring choice in the security space?
Yeah. At NICE, we feel that a customer's installation choice should not impact their monitoring choice. And what it really comes down to is the level of security customers desire to achieve a preferred state of mind. And in the past, as you indicated, consumers really only had one choice if you wanted monitoring, and that was the professionally installed system. They were bundled together. It was an annual contract. And since then, the DIY solutions have really expanded that choice significantly. And consumers can now self-monitor, flex monitor, professionally monitor, or any combination of those options as well. Consumers are really today just empowered like never before to choose the systems and monitoring options without being locked into these long-term contracts. So I think it's all continuing to trend positive in the direction of, yes, there will still be the need to monitoring, but I think it becomes a little bit more flexible and less rigid as it was before.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask our audience, if you have questions for Mark, go ahead and get them in. We still have about 6-7 minutes left, so happy to take your questions for Mark about NICE or Bode. So one thing that, again, is really interesting is that we are seeing a push from consumer demand, but also companies in the industry out towards the perimeter of the home. So covering not just premise security, meaning a sensor at the door or at the window, right? But out to cover the yard, the driveway, out to the sidewalk, right? You're all in the gate space as well, so you're already kind of extended out to the perimeter. You know, what are you seeing from your perspective on how security solutions are going to kind of expand from the building to other kind of spaces and securing other spaces?
Yeah, so as you indicated, we have products that are already on the perimeter and outside. But interestingly, this same topic came up with Chris Carney from Abode, who was doing a state of market report with parks. And he referenced some conversations that we've had with car manufacturers. And I also recently saw a survey from Lexus that was specifically mentioning vehicles as an extension of security systems. And as Chris said, having a car in the driveway with sensors that can notify owners that it's another value added partnership opportunity. And I think another way of extending security to further to the edge in that perimeter. But in terms of what we're seeing at NICE, it's a major increase in demand for connectivity and security that reaches, their gate or at least extends beyond the exterior of their house. And one of our primary objectives as a company is to enable our customers to have a seamless and simple experience the moment that they approach their property, or be able to monitor different aspects and angles or areas of their property. So, for the simplicity aspect and convenience, we're looking at things like geolocation and automation that will open a gate and door, adjust your blinds, temperature, and then trigger any of the additional automations that you may have set. In the short term, in terms of monitoring, we're looking at methods to utilize the Abode Cam 2 and the app as part of access control for gates and garage doors. And that'll be in addition to UV once it's available in North America. And the objective for us is, regardless of whether it's a DIY or pro system, is that the customer can rely on the interoperability throughout the group and all of our devices. So, I think that we'll continue to see those trends and more devices that are extending out to the perimeter.
Yeah, I think that point on vehicle monitoring is really well taken. You know, when consumers think about security and peace of mind, it's not, first and foremost, it's the people in the home, right? And then the property, and their property doesn't stop at the front door. So there's really an interesting opportunity to protect the vehicle while it's on site, but also after it even leaves the property. And certainly security providers have monitoring and monitor call centers as an asset, and there's a lot of potential opportunity in that crossover use case. Well, so I'd love to also understand a little bit about what you're seeing in different markets. So a lot of what we talked about today has been pretty US centric, North American centric. Nice is an Italian company, if I'm correct. And I know that you are present in many markets around the world, and these different markets develop differently. Can you share with us a little bit about what you're seeing for residential security or home automation across the different marketplaces that you're in internationally?
Sure. And yes, you're correct. It's an Italian company. We're headquartered in Oderzo, Italy. It's just north of Venice, which is a beautiful place to go, right at the base of the Dolomite Mountains. So that's happy to bring anybody out there. I'm always happy to go and visit. But we're present in over 100 countries. You know, our smart home and security offerings are currently offered in the UK and Europe. We're evaluating eventual expansion into Brazilian and Australian markets for the DIY and Pro lines that we have. In Europe, the DIY sales channel for security systems is much smaller than that of North America. Some of the reasons are a matter of culture, which you can imagine is incredibly diverse, with 27 different countries in part of the EU, and then many more outside of the bloc. Others are related to the products and certification process, as well as the historical path of taking the products to market. Culturally, we find that DIY installation, it's actually more common in Northern and Eastern Europe, even though consumers still end up purchasing from the dealer or installer, which is pretty interesting. We also offer our DIY systems through a vendor called Leroy Merlin in France and Poland under our Nice Home brand. But the channel really isn't as popular as going directly through the installer. We're also currently evaluating opportunities for expansion of Abode into the European market, and that would be in addition to our existing partnership with King Secure Technology in the UK. In terms of the security systems themselves, I think they tend to be a little bit more complex in this particular market. And the systems in Europe, as I said, are primarily sold through that dealer installer channel. But the manufacturers are increasingly looking at opportunities to simplify their offerings to meet the needs of the DIY market. So by introducing Abode in Europe, I think we'll be a little bit ahead of that curve. Another interesting distinction with the systems in Europe is that smart home systems, they're not typically called security systems unless they have a specific industry certification, which is EN 50131. And that's sort of like the UL certification in North America. And in addition to CE and UKCA. You know, one other, I think, interesting aspect is that the emphasis on smart home is really more specifically on controlling the home itself and then having security features as second. And that's a little bit opposite in North America, where the primary driver of smart home is security. And then also historically, the integrations, they were focused on ensuring the systems work with voice assistants, but there was less emphasis on compatibility with wide-ranging protocols, such as Zigbee and Z-Wave and whatnot. But we realized the need for that and the impact of these integrations and purpose-built UB to be compatible with multiple third-party products through Z-Wave and other protocols.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about how culturally people think about security and the language we use. Like you said, security might entail actually regulatory certification, to play in a certain way. Unfortunately, we are actually at time. So thank you so much, Mark, for sharing all of your perspective today, especially on the differences in install that you're seeing across your brand of products in the NICE Group.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great. So just give us a few minutes and we'll be back with our full panel discussion talking about trends in install in the smart home.
Welcome back. I'm excited to host this next panel talking about the growth of home security and the smart home space. We have got some powerhouse leaders joining us today, so I want to thank them for their time. And again, thank our sponsors for supporting the event this year. So let's get straight into the conversation and get going with some introductions. First, we're going to hear from Jan Dawson with Vivint. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, and we're going to show your slide on the screen while you're talking.
All right, great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me today as well. Good to be here. My name is Jan Dawson. I'm Senior Director of Research and Insights here at Vivint. For anybody who's not familiar with Vivint, we're a leading smart security company. You can see some of our products here on the screen with our alarm system and panel at the core of that offering, and cameras, thermostats, locks, some of those devices provided through partners as part of our offering. We've been in business for over 20 years. At this point, we have 1.7 million subscribers and 98% population coverage here in the US. We're based in Utah. I've been with Vivint for about 3.5 years. I'm part of our product organization, and I run our research function here that does a lot of customer and consumer research to support product design and engineering organizations that are responsible for creating and managing our products. So good to be here today.
Great, thanks for joining us. Next, we have Min with Brinks Home, the Chief Product and Strategy Officer.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you for having me, Elizabeth, and Park Associates team. I'm very glad to be here with the wonderful panels today. So Brinks Home Security is one of the largest professional monitoring service provider in the United States. We have about more than a million people that we are protecting in North America. Our mission is basically to provide more curated and personalized protection experiences with the latest and greatest technologies in the product and services, as well as user-centric in top of our mind. My role is basically enabling and developing those product and experiences with a lot of great partnership that we have in place. So our goal is not just delivering the experiences by ourselves, but we are trying to deliver the great experiences with the partnership through collaboration across the board in the industry. Again, glad to be here, and excited to talk more about what is happening in our industry and how we can help our customers to choose the right solutions. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Min. Next, we're going to go over to Dave Main with Alula, who has joined our Connections conferences for many years. So Dave, thanks again for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, and happy anniversary, 25 years. That's really cool. I guess I'm on here with the likes of Vivint and Brinks and ADT and GE. If there's one brand people might not recognize, it would be Alula, with all the other well-recognized brands up here. Alula is a provider of services and products for delivering security, video, and automation to the professional security industry. We have a broad range of offerings out in the market, and we're really here to solve the challenges that I think this conference is really here discussing. I hear a lot about what's DIY going to do to the industry. What does it mean to monitoring solutions? And I think across the board, we're seeing a shift in how products and how services are delivered to consumers. And then what does monitoring mean? And I think as an industry, we're kind of making that shift. At Alula, we're all about building the tools to allow professional dealers to be relevant, to remotely manage and be that technology advisor that we've been talking about throughout all these sessions, and to have the tools to really deliver those services on an ongoing basis to consumers and small business owners, mostly across North America. And we have about 500,000, or we're approaching about 500,000 homes and businesses underneath our platform today.
Great, thanks again, Dave, for being here. Next, we have Raya with ADT. Raya, thank you again for joining us today.
Sure, thanks for having me. I'm Raya Sevilla. I'm responsible for product at ADT. Many of you know the ADT brand, and a lot of you are probably customers. But right now are exciting times for ADT. We're in the midst of a transformation. Smart home technology and connected devices have opened up a world of opportunity for us to build on our core foundation that we've earned over the past 147 years. There's so much happening that I'd like to put it into 3 categories: connect and protect, smarter security, and ADT anywhere. For Connect and Protect, we're expanding both the depth and breadth of the ways we connect and protect people's homes through new devices and service offerings. For smarter security, with our partnership with Google, by applying artificial intelligence, machine learning, and predictive analytics, we're making our core security services even smarter and more helpful. The Helpful Home is a more secure home with ADT and Google. For residential customers, this means that being able to intelligently and proactively perform tasks on their behalves, like leveraging biometrics to unlock the doors when you arrive home or automatically securing your home when everyone has left. And for first responders, it also means that not only are we helping reduce false alarms, but we're also providing actionable intelligence, such as the number of home occupants and what part of the house they're in. For ADT Anywhere, we're also, thanks to the proliferation of mobile devices and in vivo connectivity, we can now extend our fast response monitoring services to our customers wherever they are and whenever they need us. For example, our SoSecure app puts the power and security of our 24/7 monitoring centers in your pocket. We're also doing exciting things with the automotive industry as more connected cars roll off the production lines. With the new technologies and our partners, we're able to extend our core protection services across a wider range of products, a wider range of use cases, and a wider range of customers. Very exciting times here at ADT.
Great.
Thanks,
Yep, thank you for that overview. And last but not least, we have Paul Williams with GE Lighting. Paul has also been on our virtual stage a lot, and we welcome you back again today, Paul.
Elizabeth, pleasure to be here. Always love your events. They're fantastic. So I am at GE Lighting, a Savant company. I head up our experiences and professional lighting solutions. GE Lighting, we've been in the smart home for a little over 3.5 years with a solution called C by G that was a DIY smart home solution, allowed consumers to purchase that online or from retailers across the United States and Canada and be able to simply install a solution. We have our new version, Sync, that is being released imminently here, that takes on a whole new character as we've now brought together part of what happened this last year. We were acquired by Savant, that may sound familiar to some. It's one of the industry's leaders in the smart home, professionally installed smart home. So together, we have the ability to handle the smart home all the way from DIY, all the way through professional installation, and including power and power management through Savant Power, which is also part of the smart home. Personally, I've spent since early 2004, late 2003 in the smart home, seen a lot of changes over that period of time. Always love being part of these discussions and always excited to see where we're going to go next.
Great. So thank you for that, Paul. And that takes care of our introductions. And so now we're going to dive into the conversation. And I'd like to start out with talking about defining the smart home. What does the smart home mean today versus maybe what it meant 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and we could even go 35 years back here at Parks Associates when we started studying these markets. Dave, I want to throw that question to you first. What do you think the smart home means today, and how has it changed over decades and years of time in development?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. And, it has been evolving, and I think it's been moving from the world of people being amazed that you can even have connectivity and provide things to an ability to do remote control. And now we're discussing the opportunity to add intelligence to it. And I think, we come to these conferences and you're going to hear a lot of buzzwords and a lot of protocols and interoperability and those types of topics. And they are important for all of us that deliver technology to make the smart home app happen and make it a reality. But from a consumer's standpoint, it's about tying technology to people's lives and doing it in a meaningful way. So how has it evolved? It's evolved from what I'd say is just a a dream and something that technology leaders would play around with in the 90s to a reality of remote controls and something you might be able to turn something on or off through a web portal or eventually through an app. And now we're adding that intelligence of I'd say, integrating multiple systems together and then providing more intelligent decisions behind it. And this is where, whether you call it AI or you call it data mining, where things are moving. But it has to be delivered in a way that hides the technology, hides the mystery behind it, and then just presents applications that are meaningful about when I arrive home, when my kids arrive home, when something's being delivered. To the extent we have success in delivering those types of solutions, consumers adopt it, and whether it's DIY or professional or there's services behind it, those people will pay for it if it helps improve their daily life, and that's what we're really focused on here now.
Well, sure, and safety and security have been those big drivers behind adoption of these new technologies, but there are also other areas like lighting, doors, and other energy management controls that allow for new experiences. Paul, given some of your work over the many decades, can you share where you think the smart home has been and where it's evolved to now?
Yeah, you bet. It's been an interesting journey, as I mentioned in my introduction. If I go back to kind of the early days, at least of my involvement, we were in a world where it required a professional installer because they had to be a coder. They needed to know C++ or C#, and it was literally just getting in there and I'm programming exactly what I want this thing to do, when I want it to do it, and how I want it done. And you almost started with a blank canvas. In fact, a lot of systems you did. You just kind of built it from scratch. And we've gone from that to simple APIs that allow us to pull in the capabilities of these products more easily, so we can integrate them together. That's transpired into these aggregators like Google Home or Amazon Alexa, where now those things can work together, and the technology allows for that connectivity through APIs and through cloud apps that are running there as well. We've also come from an era of custom UI. So if I go back to the early days of the smart home, the user experience for the consumer was programmed by the professional installer. They literally came in and said, all right, well, how do you want to control the light? Well, here's what we'll do, okay? Now, they usually started with some templates they had created previously, but it was very much, I'm putting all the nuts and bolts together to build this thing from scratch, where now those are all dynamically generated. Nobody's building their own interfaces for the most part anymore. We've also gone from this proprietary interface protocols, whether it was wired, and you saw a lot of those where you had to buy custom wire from these manufacturers. That's what you put in the wall. It wasn't even something that was off the shelf. You bought it from the manufacturer, and it was custom all the way from the wire in the wall, the protocol that was being communicated across that, then extended into wireless protocols were proprietary. We then went to standards, and now with things like Matter, we're abstracting that protocol, which is awesome. I love to see that's happening. In that security world, it's been interesting to watch too. As we went through these structured panels of security, now we've gone to wireless. We went to touch screens. We're now completely wireless in most places. We've gone from this world of where it was all pro monitored to self monitored. And we've also gone from where it was mentioned in the last discussion previously, where we've gone from I can self-install and still get it professionally monitored. Where before, the only way to get professional monitoring was with professional installation. And so we're seeing these combinations on what that's yielding is a great experience for a consumer to have choices. And that definition of that smart home, just to start back up where you were, is interesting because if you talk to some people, if you ask them if they have a smart home, and the fact that I have a smart thermostat or a smart doorbell, I include myself in that category now. Yeah, I've got a smart home. I've got this device. Where before, classically, if you think about what a smart home was, it was like if you didn't have soup to nuts, it wasn't really a smart home. And today, that definition has changed dramatically of what that is. And all of this has yielded great choice for consumers in not only the products they use, how they use them, the experiences they get, and then how that is delivered through either self-installation, do it for me, or actually all the way to professional installation.
Yeah, and that leads directly into the conversation about the evolution of home security and what that looks like and how that's changed really by bringing smart home devices into play. So let me see, Jan, if I can go to you here in talking about what has changed about home security systems and the installation and the experience for consumers.
Yeah, I think really what we've seen over the last few years now is just this explosion of choices. We suddenly have many more options than we had before. We've got self-installed options, we've got self-monitored options, you've got going from a system that required certain elements to having a lot more flexibility and buying piece parts and that kind of thing as well. So there's a lot more flexibility, and when more options like that become available, people are going to jump on those options. You know, it is really eroding and removing barriers to entry that have existed for a long time in the industry, and so there's some market expansion going on as a result of that. And I think in some ways it's a very healthy thing. It's bringing some welcome disruption and new blood into the industry, and it's forcing those of us already in the industry to rethink how we do things and to change maybe how we approach the markets that we're in and our business models and all that kind of thing. But I think it's also muddying the waters in some ways. I think some of the newer players in the market are marketing very heavily, and they're trying to get their message across, and people don't necessarily always understand what these new offerings are, how they're different from what's traditionally been available in the professionally monitored space and that kind of thing. And so, you know, that's also, as I say, muddying the waters for people. And sometimes it means that people are making decisions based on partial information or poor information. And so there's really an onus on those of us in the industry to do a good job of educating consumers and potential customers on the options. You know, even if you take something as simple as installation and whether you go self-installed or professionally installed, when we talk to customers and consumers in this market, we find that oftentimes the reasons why they choose one or other of those options isn't that they feel they can or can't do the installation. On the professional installation side, it's often that they just want the thing to work properly. And so they want a professional installer because they want to know when the system is installed, it will work reliably, and they want the company to stand behind that. And so for those of us that are in the professional installation business, that means we really have to stand up to that promise that we make by professionally installing things for people. On the self-install side, the biggest driver is often price rather than I want to install this thing myself. It's like, it seems a lot cheaper if I install it myself. And one of the customers we spoke to in a research project recently talked about the cheap becomes expensive in explaining why she went the professional installation route. And what she meant by that was she saw friends who were kind of, as she saw it, cutting corners and getting DIY solutions into their homes. And then we're finding that it wasn't working properly, and they were having to call customer care, rip stuff out, install new things to try to get it to work better. And she said, I was grateful that I installed my system professionally. I had it professionally installed so that I didn't have to deal with those problems. I invested a little extra up front, and I have now the peace of mind that comes from that. And so, again, the onus is on us to help consumers to make educated choices about how to go with professional installation, self-installation, pro monitoring, self-monitoring, what the trade-offs might be, and the kinds of decisions that they're making.
Yeah, that's great, and certainly a topic I think that Raya and Min could also address here as well. So I'd like to see if you guys want to go ahead and jump in about this evolution of home security.
Sure. As everyone has mentioned before, I mean, we want our customers to feel safe. They want peace of mind, and they do have an option. And an installation method is an option. You can do it yourself as a self-installer. We can do it with you remotely, or you can have it professionally installed. And depending on the complexity of the system and what the customer wants, it is options for the customer. And education is important because some things are more complicated to install than others, but there is a choice for the customer to be had, and it is their choice. And the installation route is very different than the monitoring route, and it's not necessarily bundled anymore, where you can have a self-installed system but still professionally monitored, or you can have a professionally monitored, professionally installed system that is self-monitored. So right now, where the industry is going is it's a customer's choice.
Min, you have anything you want to add on to that? I know Brinks has gone through rebranding where you're now Brinks Home, emphasizing the home, and so allow you a minute here as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, as Jen and Raya said, I think consumers has plenty of choices today. So I think, the role, of us and Vivint and ADT and other people here probably will just curate the right experiences to the customers, right? So how we can actually, better educate them and make them actually make the right choices and also like support their choices. So whenever they need the support, even if they, let's say they choose like DIY installation solutions, when they actually run into the issues with their equipment, they probably need some sort of like professional support, either digitally or with the human touch. So I think also like companies like us has to really think through how organically we can actually present ourselves in an organic way. So when consumers needed us, we actually be there and serve them in a way they want. So I think, these like flexibility, makes things really complicated. Our job is basically simplify and curate the right experiences for the customers, so they actually get the right things at the right timing at the right pricing.
Well, consumer expectations are just a huge part of this conversation, and aligning those expectations with a solution that is going to keep them happy and satisfied. So let's go over to Dave here and ask you a little bit about what consumers expect and meeting those expectations through new solutions.
Yeah, what I find interesting around here, there's a lot of dialogue about the event of purchasing a smart home and whether it's DIY or professional and what the monitoring options are. I think we've moved to a time where this is not a singular event. I think the smart home evolves over time. It evolves with the consumer. It evolves with their life and with the change of life. And this entire panel and this entire industry is helping put the tools in place to make that evolution occur. And then on the professional monitoring, I think the key here is there's professional monitoring, which is one end of a service platform, but there are a lot of other service offerings that are being investigated. And I think everybody on this panel, whether it's ADT or Brinks or Vivint, those that are in the service game, you're playing around with different models on how to deliver services to different segments of the market for consumers. A renter's needs might be very different than a homeowner's needs, and a homeowner with kids might be different than, as I'm getting older, as I age. So all of this is an evolution, and so I don't see the smart home as an event that I purchased on May 27th, and now I'm done. It's something that it evolved, and it might start with a smart thermostat or a garage door controller. Now, the role of the professional is to really be that technology expert, and I've heard it emphasized here several times. People don't know how to tie this together, and they don't know how to make it do the meaningful things that they need to kind of improve their life or to have it evolve with them. And those are the types of things that we're developing. So I think expectations on consumers for connected device and control exist, but I think they're looking for the pros to be that technical advocate and to be there with them as their life journey changes and as their smart home experience changes. And that's what we're really building all of our tools to deliver.
And Jan, if you can add on to this in terms of that consultative selling, I guess, in the sense of allowing a consumer to understand what a certain solution can do for them. Share us a little bit about some of your views on that.
Absolutely, yeah. The process that we go to, we sell through two major channels today. We have a door-to-door sales channel and we have a phone sales channels, and it's about 50-50 at the moment between those two channels. And both of those are very consultative experiences. And if you were to talk to our salespeople and listen in on some of the sales calls and the conversations they have on doorsteps with people, they are asking a lot of questions that are not about which products do you want, but about what experience do you want at the end of the day? What problems are you trying to solve? What worries do you have? What pain points do you have, essentially? So they'll ask about, do you have kids? Do you have pets? Do you have a swimming pool? All of these kinds of questions. And then they try to fit a solution to the specific needs of that customer. And then when our installer goes into the home to actually install the system, they're following up with the next level of detail on that, which is, which doors do you come in and out of the most? Do you usually come in through the garage? Do you come in through the front door or side door? Where should we put the security panel so that it's going to be accessible to you as you come in and out of the home? But also, which areas outside the home are you trying to cover? Are you most worried about your car in the driveway, or the swimming pool in the back, and maybe kids getting into that, or something else? And so it's a very consultative sale from that perspective. And I think one way in which we're now evolving that process is to not just see this as a singular event, as Dave was saying just now, but to see it as a progression over time. And so, not only do we sell a system and then that stays in somebody's home unchanged for 5 years, but to take a more active role in upgrading that system and adding components to it over time, so that as the customer's needs change, we can help to meet new needs that they might have with another consultative sale, essentially give them more of what they need, and combining kind of the consultative way that they came into it in the first place with as a human being involved in that process with things like e-commerce and so on, so that if they do know what they want, they can easily add products to the mix without having to go through a human being to do that, if that's their preference. And so we're always there to support them through that process. But again, it's about giving them the options that they want.
So consumer choice, hyper-personalization in terms of what they may have in their home and how they're wanting to protect or watch over it are important considerations. The other thing that you really mentioned there also is the hub or the controller of the home. And that's something that we've looked at very closely over the years, and even consideration of a tipping point. Once a consumer gets a certain number of devices in their home, then they are looking and expecting now for a controller, a system that integrates that all together. And now this security hub for the home can really be a lot of different things, especially given the voice activation that's now in play with smart speakers. And so how do you all see smart home devices being able to compete with the system play? And I'm going to go to Paul here with this first question, but also I'd love to get the whole panel's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've seen different takes on this. We've seen companies that try to virtualize everything in the cloud. We found that at least personally, we have found that may not be the best thing to do always. The reliability of the cloud wall, it's certainly great for mission critical things like fire, alerts, panic. I need to know that I've got access and that I'm going to be able to connect with somebody instantaneously, no matter what's gone on with my Wi-Fi or whatever else is going on in the house, or that I have an internet connection. So having that happen in the cloud has at least we have found is not necessarily the best thing all the time. There's certainly functionality that makes sense for cloud work and cloud virtualization. The hub itself, though, and I like that it's taken on a different tact. You think of these hubs as these black boxes, and we've gone from black boxes to things that are useful, like a smart speaker or a touchscreen that has the integrated touch panel that has the integrated hub within it or bridge within it. And I think those useful devices certainly, I think, speak to consumers better than, hey, just go plug this device in somewhere in your house and it works. Those are things that can easily get unplugged mistakenly, and then suddenly you don't have the connectivity you want. But I really think that the bigger part of this is it really allows for flexible location of that device. And in these complex environments that you're going into, where we're trying to solve a lot of it wirelessly today, being able to take that device and place it anywhere in the house or within that space is also very important. And that's another, I think, one of the things that we have found is that, as we look at hubs, having them or these controllers, that they're in the right place to be able to provide that connectivity that needs to be there. And then having that processing power on site, I think, is incredibly important, especially as we start talking about some of these advanced, once again, throwing out some terms we were talking about earlier, AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, that, having a portion of that at least done remotely is more efficient than trying to do all of it virtualized in the cloud. And so I definitely think they play a part as we continue into this next generation of smart devices that are offering suggestions and possible solutions for us.
Great. And Jan, do you have any comments on this? And I just want to throw out that we have got a very specific question about this from our audience, about the balance of analytics, decision making done at the edge in embedded devices, or the controller versus the analytics in the cloud. So any expansion on that will be welcomed from our audience.
Great. Yeah, I certainly talked to the theme of hubs. I think one of the great things is that, in the past, often for some of these smart home devices, you had to buy a hub for almost every device that you were putting in your home, and that could often double or even more the price of that solution. So allowing people to use a device they already have in the home seems like a great solution to that problem. It could save money and simplify that process. The challenge with that approach, though, is that oftentimes that device has its own purpose, and that dictates the location. Your thermostat is probably in the same thermostat it's always been in your house because that location was wired into the HVAC system years, maybe decades ago. And that may not be the ideal location for, say, a hub that's supposed to connect to other devices in the home. You may want to place that more centrally on a different floor or closer to the specific devices you're trying to enable. A voice speaker you may want to place in your kitchen where you do your cooking and so on. And yet again, there's a doorbell camera on the outside of the home, the other end of the house that needs to connect to that. And so that can be challenging. So one of the things we've really been thinking about is the placement of these hub devices in the home and what makes sense. And is it always the same place as whatever other device that might be tied into, and trying to understand also where are people's routers in their home. You may want to be close to that, but you may also want to be close to the other devices. So trying to solve for placement of devices and also to some extent specialization of devices. And I think because we do sell a complete system, a solution to people where the hub device is only a small part of it, I think it better enables us to do that specialization. And because again, we have the professional installation with that consultative sale, we can make sure that devices that the consumer, the customer is going to be interacting with directly are placed where that user experience is the best. And at the same time, connectivity devices are placed where those make the most sense at the same time. So splitting those things and avoiding that something gets placed in the wrong spot for the customer just because it's the best for connectivity. And that helps to solve some of the problems with their cloud integrations as well, because cloud really means you're on your own as far as connectivity goes. The clever stuff's happening in the cloud, but you've got to figure out, is your Wi-Fi good enough and all the rest of it? And so try to solve some of those problems with the placement of the devices in the home.
If I could just add something, and I know Min and Raya are going to have some comments because you're, I know some of the work you guys are doing are going to play into this, but a hub, the definition of a hub is really taking some technology and ultimately connecting it to IP. And I think all these subsystems ultimately have some sort of an IP connection. Increasingly, there's Wi-Fi direct thermostats, there's Wi-Fi direct lighting systems. If it's a different technology, there's probably a hub that's going to connect those together. Jan made an interesting point a while ago that historically in the security industry, you got a customer and you never went back and upsold that customer. You retained the customer and you serviced them, but they kind of kept the same service as long as possible. We're in the world now where new services are being offered, and since everything ultimately gets to IP connectivity, there's an opportunity to start to do some discovery of devices. And so I think, the question on, are there going to be analytics in the cloud or at the edge? The answer is yes. And some of it's going to be to the extent that you don't even have to call somebody to market to them. You just discover the fact that a new device was enrolled that could become part of the service that you're offering that customer. Now you're proactively calling. You're not trying to sell them anything new. You're trying to improve the experience based on that discovery. So I personally think there already are multiple hubs that exist in a home. There will continue to be multiple hubs that exist, and there's multiple devices. A hub is kind of an IP connectivity point for some service. And we are all about trying to find those devices. We'll discover them locally. There will be some analytics done in the cloud, but ultimately it's to deliver a service. And I know, Raya, you're working with some companies that are pretty good at this discovery and analytics. And Min, I think, I know with your background, you probably come from that world too. I think that's where we're going to evolve to personally.
Yeah, definitely. As much as you're passionate about the IP-oriented sort of like solution, I mean, it's much easier for consumers to discover, different peripheral devices. At the same time, consumers, don't want to deal with all different types of standard and radios. IP is good enough solution for them to be connected, to the reliable network. So how we can actually leverage these IP technologies going forward, because it's much more stabilized, it's much more reliable now. And when we go through all this like pandemic, customers as well as the companies have upgraded the equipment. So now it's even much more stabilized and perform pretty well. So how we can actually leverage these like existing technologies and equipment that customer doesn't have to invest more. And provide the reliable experiences. And one great thing about the hub devices, now I see it became another sort of like data collection point. So for example, smart speaker, because it has the mic and speakers, it can actually be the audio like analytics like devices, and a lot of like consumers are feeling uncomfortable having indoor cameras because they don't want to really breach any privacies, right? So in that privacy concern, in the context that I think these like smart devices, standalone devices can be probably play an important role to collect the right level of information and analyze and edge, and then really provide the useful and helpful services to the customers without sending all these data and information to the cloud. So I think with the IP internet sort of like technology being more developed and more adopted, plus all these like privacy concern, I think there will be a lot of like different types of like roles of the devices. We will see those things, and I don't think that's that far from today. And we are seeing all these like changes like happening today.
It's happening right now, Raya. Let's hear what you think about this controller hub.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to Jan's earlier point about educating customers. Not all hubs are created equally. Some are smart speakers and some are security hubs. True security hubs are purposely designed and built to meet certain recognized standards for safety and reliability. So for example, a lot of the security hubs that we have, they've got battery backups in case of power failure. They've got cellular connectivity as a secondary communication path in case of internet failure. So this isn't quite exactly the same as just a smart speaker that provides a lifestyle convenience for a customer. So back to a purposefully built hub and what they do, back to educating the customer. There are certain hubs that are built for security purposes, and there are certain hubs that are for lifestyle. Now, relative to whether or not all these hubs are data collection points, yes. But the important part of the data collection points is customers have to opt in. It's a customer's choice as to whether or not they want to share the data with ADT, with Google, with Nest, with Ring. It's the customer's choice as to what to share. And it's a balance of that choice and back to educating the customer of opting in allows for a faster response. So relative to whether or not the processing power is in the cloud or in the device, there's a latency aspect to it. There's certain things that you would like to opt in to be able to, so that it's done locally, so that you get a faster response. For example, the doorbell. You're going to want some sort of a pretty local experience when trying to answer a doorbell because the response times matters. So relative to the balance between customers opting in for certain data sharing to the cloud, to ADT, to Google, to whoever their partner is, back to educating the customer as to these are what is more helpful to you, and if you share these data points with your providers, this is what the benefits are. So customers have a choice, and it's on us to educate that customer as to their various choices and the various solutions.
Yeah, and not just the educating customers, but make it easier for the customers, right? So they know where exactly they should go to control their data, privacy, options, and they actually have the full visibility, what data is being collected and being shared, and they have the full control. I think, that's, our job really to make that discovery and control experience much more consumer friendly, so they have the full control on their end.
Let's shift over and talk a little bit about the services side of the market. So I do want to remind our audience that we have a couple of polls. So please check out the poll tab and answer those questions when you have a chance. But let's move over and talk about services. So Paul, I'm actually going to start off here with you because we have a question from the audience specific to services. So as the device maker on the panel, how do you see the potential for expanding from one device, a one-time sale, to the reoccurring revenue play?
So the topic that's hot within our organization, and I think many organizations today, as we see the shift that's occurring for companies, much like ours and everyone else, is thinking through the monetization strategy of their organizations, but also thinking about how consumers are becoming accustomed to the way that technology is now brought into their home. And I think there's a fundamental shift that's occurred here, and where people are expecting that there is some service. I'm going to pay for something. In the earlier comment, that I'm going to understand exactly what I'm getting for that there's a benefit that's associated with that cost, but that I'm okay that that cost reoccurs and that I'm going to pay for it because it's returning some value for me. And the expectation of that, I think, if you go further, is that the hardware itself becomes less of a cost impact to the consumer, and that they're paying for this service that is an experience, really, is what they're paying for, that they get out of leveraging the hardware. And so as a hardware manufacturer, we're thinking long and hard about this, about how does that transition occur directly from having us be completely reliant on the products that we're selling to the services that we're lumping on top of that. In fact, we're launching a new service as part of our new release next week. So those are the things as we make that transition. And we believe that offers real value for consumers, because now we can really talk about, these are just the pieces and parts you need to deliver this experience. And that experience is inclusive of all the things we've talked about. It's the hardware that you've got, it's the hubs, the purposeful hubs that we have, but it's also the services and the information and the processing that goes on top of that to deliver something for that consumer of value. And we believe, and I believe that we continue to see the market has validated that is a model that is acceptable for consumers, as long as you've got great solutions. And that's what we, as a device manufacturer, we're not exclusive to that, because I hear from some of my other associates throughout the industry that are also working on that same challenge today.
Well, and the willingness to pay for services is a big one that we study at Parks Associates, including lots of questions from the industry about subscription fatigue and whether we're going to hit that point in the market where consumers are not willing to pay. And this is absolutely not something that we currently see at Parks Associates. We see consumers embracing all sorts of different services, from cybersecurity to OTT, to value-added services on top of broadband, to the home security service. But Jan, I want to move over to you with this question in terms of understanding that monthly fee and the value that's given there, and how you position that for consumers.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the big question for us all in this industry is, are we like a gym membership? Are we like insurance, or are we like Netflix or something like that? We've all been there with a gym membership. You sign up for a gym membership, maybe it's early January. You have the best intentions of going. You go maybe 3 times the first week and 1 time the next, and you stop going. And pretty quickly that starts to just be money coming out of your account that you see absolutely no value in. And maybe you keep it on for sheer guilt, but eventually you're going to cancel that, especially when you're reviewing your finances and looking for places to cut costs. Next, you've got insurance, and insurance is something that you kind of willingly pay for each month, even though you never use it, because you kind of hope you never have to use it. And so it's there in the background. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You see the money coming out of your account every month, but you probably wouldn't dream of canceling your home insurance, your car insurance, because there are real potential downsides to doing that. But it's not delivering, for the most part, a lot of tangible daily value. And I think there's a risk with security systems. We can either be the first, and we certainly see this with people who install systems and then don't arm them regularly. They start to be like that gym membership. It's just money coming out of the account without any benefit at all. Sometimes it's more like insurance, where they're kind of happy to have it just in case something ever happens. But I think we can be, and I use Netflix as my initial example, but I think we can be better than both of those things. I think we can find ways to deliver tangible daily value. And one of the things that we see in particular in the fact that we combine security and smart home is that the security is an emotional purchase, and keeping it is often an emotional decision as well, because there is real emotional impact in terms of peace of mind from having a security system. People sleep better, they don't worry as much, they don't have to get up every time they hear a strange noise outside. You know, there's all kinds of very tangible benefits, and people talk about that as something that's priceless to them. So that's already a big benefit, but it's often a very passive benefit because the system's just doing its thing in the background. But we find that by having additional smart home devices in the home, whether it's cameras, whether it's thermostats, whether it's lights, whether it's locks, or any number of other devices like that, that do have a more tangible and regular interaction with them, where you see the value in a much more tangible way, that really adds to the value of the overall subscription they have. So even though we probably wouldn't dream of charging somebody a monthly fee for a thermostat, for example, or even for lighting, they are paying an overall bundle of monthly fees, and these things kind of come along for the ride, and often that's where a lot of the daily value comes. And so I think the key for us here is not so much is there subscription fatigue, but are we in the category of essential services that people just can't afford to give up because they give so much value, to the point that was made earlier.
Well, that's great. And certainly the business side of the conversation is an important one, with that reoccurring revenue being attached to the hardware. From our poll, we have 35% of our audience believes that pro monitoring services or ad hoc monitoring is the best way to get that reoccurring revenue. And the second is 29% is independent living monitoring. So if we could maybe jump over and talk a little bit about health and wellness and the role that the home and technology plays for the consumer in their healthy lifestyle. And let's see if maybe we can go to Min on that question.
Yeah, so like to the question about like Netflix, so people actually pay between $10 to $20 for the entire catalog of like Netflix library today, right? So I think the perceived value is pretty big, but compared to what they actually get, they feel like the cost actually is much lower than the benefits they get. So how we can actually make the same perceived value to the essential of our services. So customers are paying between $30 to $50 today for professional home monitoring, and in order for us to justify that investment every month, even though it's essential, they have to really feel, the value in their daily life. So, these security events is not a daily event. So in order for us to actually, keep reminding people of the benefits of the, having the security solutions and smart home solutions, we have more daily, usage that we can actually communicate and engage with our customers. And in that sense, I think, health, the health related services and, especially, the purse services are a great example to create that daily stickiness to the customers. And we have camera devices, we have sensors in a home. So there are many ways we can actually deliver that experiences without adding more devices into the home. So I think that's going to be a really great value added services that justify the payments that they are making today, and then create really that the daily stickiness to the user. So we have the engagement with the users and create this retention throughout their lifetime.
Great, Ryan. Do you have any comments on the
Sure.
healthy home?
Yeah, aging in place is actually a passion of mine, especially as my parents age. It's very top of mind, and aging in place is just a flavor of home monitoring. But I think the experience that we have not solved yet is there's two experiences in aging in place. It's the caregiver and the care recipient. Both need their own unique experiences, because both are approaching it from the monitoring piece from a different angle, the notifications from a different angle. So, and Min is right that it is a daily activity. It's not just a one-time event, or it's not just a once in a quarter event. It is a daily activity to monitor whether or not they've drank water, taken their medication, got out of bed. So it is a daily event, but it is an experience that we still have to mature and solve for from both the caregiver and care recipient standpoint. But the good news is a lot of the technologies already exist, whether or not it's an indoor camera, an open-close sensor. So all the technology is there. It's just focusing on the right experience for both recipients.
And it's really, Raya, it's an evolution of technology and the use, as you point out. I mean, the connected home, the smart home, the connected security experience, 20 years ago, we couldn't do this because you couldn't see all the sensor data. You couldn't see the activity and the needs of a person that's trying to live independently or trying to age in place are going to evolve slowly. And we can turn on new services and new capabilities, whether it's to the caregiver or the care recipient, as you point out. Those can evolve over time. And this is how the same security system that protected you when you had young kids and then watches over your home when you start to travel as you get to retirement age can then be there to kind of help you live in that home more safely and securely while your kids watch over you. You don't have to change technology. You subscribe to a different layer of service. And this is how the way a monitored, is it going to be a monitored platform? It's going to be a services platform. And what those services are going to evolve. And one of them is somebody that's, looking for an alarm event, but there's a whole series of services we're going to be able to deliver on these connected platforms.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I love that comment, and Jan, I loved the bringing in the Netflix insurance versus gym membership service points. I think that's great. Dave, what you're saying speaks a little bit sort of to the lifetime value of a customer. And we have lots of younger generations who are growing up with technology as part of their daily life. I have 3 children, and they know all about technology. So as everybody gets older, there will be this growing expectation that technology should be able to serve them in their homes. And certainly the amount of money spent to keep older people safe in facilities is enormous. And there won't be enough facilities to house the millions of older adults that we have. So technology really can play a huge role there. And I think that's a complicated market, very highly regulated, and very important when you have a monitored event. If you have somebody who needs medical attention, something beyond, they haven't used the restroom or taken their pills for the day, then you've got to make sure you've got reliability, it works, and all of the pieces are in place to be able to help that person. So really, really important topic, and one of my favorites as well, because I think technology can just play such a huge role for consumers, really impactful. Let's shift though and talk a little bit about the security dealer side. So we have this huge group of people who go in the home and do the installation of these products. How are you going to attach services to that group so they can help support that? And Raya, I'm going to start off with you on that question, if it's okay. So again, the question is, with security dealers, how are you going to integrate all of this data and knowledge you're getting as a way to enhance that ultimate experience with support or anything else that the consumer might need?
So with ADT, our security dealers actually install the same system as our direct technicians. So from an experience perspective, a product perspective, whether or not they're installed by an ADT authorized dealer or whether or not it's installed by what we call the ADT Blue Shirt, it is the same technology, it is the same product, and it is the same monitoring. So for the most part, the same value that the customer receives directly from ADT, they also receive from our ADT authorized dealers. And that monitoring is done by ADT and not necessarily by our authorized dealers. And at some point, the service of that is also actually done by ADT and no longer our authorized dealers. So from an authorized dealer perspective, it's the same products that our authorized dealers are installing on behalf of our customers.
Any other comments on the impact for the security dealers? Again, these groups have very low margins, very small companies typically operating. How are we going to keep them in business? They're adding a lot of bells and whistles to the deal.
I think there is a way to align sort of like incentives. It's basically, like the hardware and services, not two separate things, right? It goes together. So smartphone, it's a hardware, but it actually enables a lot of like different services. Same thing goes with AirPods. It's just like, listening tools, but actually it has a lot of like, streaming services you can tie that to. So how we can actually tie this like service into hardware they actually sell. So like camera is a good example. So if they sell more outdoor camera, doorbells, we can attach, the service, the video related services like, cloud stories, like video analytics and stuff, right? So I think, if they sell more devices, they can actually, we can actually drive more revenues. And, there will be probably much better economics to share, between, the companies like us and the dealers. So I think, if we can actually tie these together and make that value proposition is very clear to the end consumers at the same time to the, the dealer and channel partners, I think there is a better way we can actually drive, the both sides of the economics better.
And I believe independent security providers or security professionals, they're going to make their value is known by their local presence. They're there. They're the technology expert. And then we have to build tools that allow them to proactively monitor. I think, we've heard this kind of echoed throughout all the conversation on putting the technology in is one step. Keeping the technology running is the critical step. And the value for the professional, whether they're servicing, somebody aging in place or serving, providing life safety services to a growing family, it's about not only getting the equipment in, but it's layering that service on to monitor and make sure it keeps running. And the more companies like Alula can do to provide those tools to proactively monitor it and not have to roll a truck every time, but to know that something's out or there's something new or something has changed, and resolve it as effectively as possible through our connected devices, that's going to be key. Or if we can't get there off of remote services, knowing what has gone wrong so you get the right person there and the right equipment to keep that running. And that's going to allow you to serve a lot of different markets. And that's what we really focus on, I know at our company, and I think everybody here is doing the same.
Great, yeah, thanks for that, Dave. And that leads a little bit into our last point here. We just have a couple minutes, but I want to address a number of factors that are in the market now. We've had the pandemic last year that's still kind of going and hopefully over soon. We have things happening with pricing going up. The housing market is slowing down. Inflation is potentially going to be an issue. And then now we've got the supply chain with chips being a problem. And actually, I think a lot of products that get built are missing in action because of the supply chain issues. So as our last note, I'd really like to go around and see if you all can share what you think in the next 12 months is going to happen with the smart home and security space, given the number of factors we have on the market today. And let me start out with Jan. Sorry about that.
No problem. So yeah, to me, it comes down to fundamentals. I think some things are changing constantly and we always have to be adaptive to those. But at the root of this whole thing is creating a great customer experience around security, around smart home, getting the right devices into people's homes, getting the right services with those, and making sure it's all working flawlessly to create a great experience, providing peace of mind, providing the kind of convenience and simplicity that we should be delivering. And COVID and all these other things kind of threaten to interfere with that. But if we allow them to distract us from that core value proposition, I think we're making a mistake. And so I think staying laser focused on those things, adapting as we need to, is key. And so in terms of what's going to happen in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of the same trends. We're going to see new players coming into the market. We're going to see some players leaving the market, consolidation and partnerships, all the rest of it. That will keep going. But hopefully it will all be in service of serving our customers better and providing that peace of mind and convenience that's really at the core of everything that we're trying to do.
Great, thanks for that. Paul, let's go to you next on that question.
Yeah, I would say that if I look at the short term, we look at the next 12 months, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, the supply chain is stressed right now. We're feeling that in our manufacturing. We're feeling it in the supply chain of raw components. I think that's something we're going to see for some time. The good news about this is that supply and demand curves usually start to take care of themselves. We'll see the suppliers do the right thing, jump in, get the output increase, so that we start to see the raw component levels of as far as lead times come back down again. But until then, we're in kind of an interesting state here as an equipment manufacturer. We're having to make shifts in where we're manufacturing and to who's manufacturing based on availability of componentry and availability of those supply chains, including the shipping of products as well. There are port issues around the planet. If you look at supply chains trying to provide products that we're going to have to react to. I think that's something that we'll live with for the next 12 months. It's certainly going to correct itself, as it always has in the past. I would layer on what Jan said as well. We're going to focus in on providing best possible experience for the consumer. We're also, though, as an equipment manufacturer, very hyper-focused on making sure we can supply our consumers with those solutions, because we do not want to go into a period where we're not simply able to provide them with the solutions they need. And that demand for those products has gone up as well.
Great. Yeah, it's a tough world out there right now. Dave, let's hear from you on our future.
Yeah. So first off, I'd say the pandemic, social unrest, all of these factors create uncertainty. And if there's one thing about the industry we're talking about, uncertainty is generally our friend. So it's actually increasing demand because it's changing how people live. It's changing their comfort level. And we're all about providing solutions that kind of help them address to that shift. From a supply chain standpoint, yeah, it's challenging out there. I know we're blessed with a team here who design multiple components in and can react quickly. And so as we see a little bit of a squeeze, we're able to adapt to it. And I'm hearing the same from a lot of our competitors out there. But I think it's definitely an environment where it is going to evolve, and uncertainty creates opportunity for everybody to, I think, step up their game, not only on the supply side, but in how the services are delivered. And I think we've seen a lot of innovation happen as a result of that, which is a good thing.
Great. Uncertainty brings opportunity. Really good phrase there. Ryan, let's go to you next, and then we'll end with you.
Yeah, so relative to supply chain, we're blessed with a great supply chain team here at ADT who I don't know if they've anticipated it, but we have enough supply to meet our customers' demands. And back to flexibility, throughout this entire supply chain issues, the pandemic, the social unrest, it forces us to be a little bit more creative relative to supply chain and how we forecast, and understanding all the components associated with each of our devices and which ones are the truly long lead time parts, and make sure that if the manufacturers need a year, they need a year, and consequently we forecast it out now. And so it's a flexibility, especially with supply chain, and better really understanding all the components associated with our products is pretty much one of the eye-opening exercises we have. And as I said, we've got a very gifted supply chain team that anticipated quite a number of things. But I agree with both Jan and Dave that the customer experience is paramount, and we do need to provide them, even with the supply chain issues, the ideal customer experience. And so that shouldn't be compromised even with the supply chain issues.
Yeah, and I echoed Raya. I think, this like challenge basically make us more creative and more think through what really matters, right? So, we somewhat sort of like, have this like all functioning devices, but, we really have to think through like, are all these like parts or all these like functions are being used by our customers and really matters to deliver the great experience to the users. So I think, we are looking at all the key parts and features to make sure everything actually has the purposeful, existence. Otherwise, we can potentially, come up with the creative solutions which potentially lower the dependency on, the supply issues that we are going through now, and actually without sacrificing any customer experiences going forward. So I believe this challenge definitely will get us to be more creative and potentially better out in terms of like delivering the right experiences at the right pricing points.
Well, great. No doubt we are in a world of change and disruption that creates opportunity for growth, and certainly appreciate your insights and sharing your time today with our audience on the growth of the smart home and home security space. So thank you again for joining me today, and look forward to talking to you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great. So that will end our session for today. What an awesome panel of industry experts. I hope you'll join us now on Zoom for a networking discussion talking about market drivers and barriers for smart home technologies. And that will end our day today, but we will see you again tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining us.
The Connected Consumer Podcast.
Hi, my name is Rosie Alpino, and I'm one of the hosts for Parks Associates' new podcast, The Connected Consumer. This podcast is all about Parks Associates' data-driven market insights on emerging consumer technology products and services, featuring our talented analyst team and industry leaders bringing new and innovative products to the market. In this podcast, you'll get an inside look at the latest industry trends focused on the connected consumer, home automation and security, energy management, connected health, and independent living, and digital content and video services. In our very first episode, we will take a trip down memory lane through the history and evolution of Parks Associates. This year, Parks Associates is celebrating its 35th year in business and its 25th year hosting Connections, which is our signature event focused on the connected home.
The Connected Consumer Podcast.